There is a single line in the history of life on Earth that no one has ever been able to read. It is the line that describes how we arrived. 4 billion years of evolution left a trail you can hold in your hand. Bone, footprints pressed into ancient mud, strands of DNA that can be read like a sentence. We know how a fish became a creature that walked on land. We know how that creature stood upright and looked out across a plain. The story is slow and patient, and it almost never surprises us. And then something happens for which science has no word. So, for the most part, we have quietly agreed not to talk about it. Evolution works slowly. A single trait shifts across hundreds of thousands of years. That rule has no known exceptions. None. Except one. In a span that is almost nothing on the evolutionary clock, the brain of our ancestor swells. It grows so fast that the curve on the graph stops behaving like a curve at all. It rises until it is no longer a slope. It becomes a wall. Scientists call this the leap. It is a comfortable word. It sounds technical, and it hides something very simple. We do not actually know what happened. Life's story on Earth, for most of its long history, moves at a pace almost too slow to notice. Traits shift, but only by the smallest degrees. A tooth grows a fraction broader, a limb stretches by a single joint, a brow ridge softens over tens of thousands of years. In the fossil record, one form shades into the next with the patience of tides wearing down stone. This is the rhythm that shapes everything from the silent spiral of a shell to the branching of a limb. Change is always measured, always the sum of countless births and deaths. Paleoanthropologists speak of evolution as a process that prefers the incremental. They chart brain sizes across the bones of our ancestors and see a gentle slope, not a staircase. A recent study tracing nearly 100 ancient skulls found that even the most dramatic increases in brain volume unfolded within lineages, not as sudden leaps, but as slow, overlapping rises. The curve, when drawn honestly, is a slope that climbs through deep time, never a cliff, never a break. One expert puts it simply, nature is a tinkerer, not an engineer. The ordinary expectation is that every new feature, every adaptation is just another brushstroke on a canvas that is never wiped clean. This is the law of continuity. For millions of years, it held without exception. The story, for all its strangeness, is supposed to make sense. But then, the slope breaks. The graph of hominin brain size, so steady for ages, suddenly rears up. A near vertical rise that slices through the gentle incline like a fracture in stone. In the space between 800,000 and 200,000 years ago, average brain volume surges from about 960 cubic centimeters in Homo erectus to nearly 1,400 cubic centimeters in early Homo sapiens. For hundreds of thousands of years, the numbers barely budged, creeping up by a handful of cubic centimeters each millennium. Now, the curve steepens, almost curling back on itself, as if some unseen force has pressed a thumb to the scale. Paleoanthropologists call it the wall, not a literal cliff, but a pattern so abrupt it defies the patient logic of natural selection. Fossil skulls from Cima de los Huesos in Spain, dated to around 430,000 years ago, already show a leap, endocranial volumes averaging 1,241 cubic centimeters, well above their ancestors. By the time the Jebel Irhoud fossils appear in Morocco, around 315,000 years ago, brain cases approach the modern range. The old rhythm is gone. The graph's calm, ancient slope is shattered, replaced by a spike that no other lineage matches. Most evolutionary stories unfold in shades and gradients. Here, the evidence draws a line, a wall that seems to separate what came before from everything after. The question is not just how this happened, but why, and what it means for the story of mind itself. In 2001, Simon Fisher and Cecilia Lai traced a rare speech disorder in the KE family to a mutation in the FOXP2 gene. For a moment, the field buzzed with the idea of a single genetic switch for language. FOXP2 shapes the motor control behind speech, its protein guiding neural circuits like a conductor. The discovery promised clarity, a gene that could explain the voice in our heads. But FOXP2's story is anything but simple. Its sequence appears in Neanderthals and Denisovans, species who never spoke as we do. The gene's influence stretches beyond speech, shaping neurons in the lungs, heart, and even mood. In mice, removing FOXP2 alters movement and vocalizations. In songbirds, silencing it scrambles their songs, but does not erase them. Its effects ripple across many traits. As one geneticist notes, FOXP2 is necessary but not sufficient. Language emerges from a network of genes, each one tuning the mind, no single mutation holding the key. 74,000 years ago, a mountain in Sumatra tore itself apart. The Toba super eruption unleashed ash and sulfur across half the planet, blotting out the sun and plunging the world into a volcanic winter. Lake sediments and ice cores still bear the scar, layers of dust, a sudden chill, the faint chemical signature of catastrophe. Some climatologists imagine a world reduced to twilight, with growing seasons cut short and whole landscapes stripped bare. In this darkness, the story goes, humanity came close to vanishing. Population models suggest a squeeze. Maybe as few as 10,000 people survived, scattered in isolated pockets. The bottleneck theory casts Toba as a crucible, a disaster so severe it could have forced a leap in culture or mind, compressing evolution into a single, desperate moment. Yet the evidence is slippery. Ancient DNA hints at a dip, but not a crash. Archaeological traces continue across the ash, showing no clear break. The catastrophe is real, but its power to explain the mind's awakening remains uncertain, a shadow at the edge of the record, not the trigger we hope to find. Some riddles do not yield to the knife or the microscope. The search for a single cause, one gene, one disaster, one step, runs aground here on a question that will not resolve. The mind's arrival leaves no fossil, no chemical trace, no clear event in the strata. For every mechanism pinned to the board, whether mutation, bottleneck, or selection, something slips away, unmeasured and unclaimed. The philosopher Thomas Nagel once wrote, "Consciousness is what makes the mind-body problem really intractable. To know what it is like to be, to feel the world from inside, is a fact no scan or theory can yet reach. The boundary is not just scientific, but conceptual. What if the leap into awareness is not a matter of missing data, but a rift that science cannot cross? The possibility lingers, taboo, unsettling, that the cause of the one true break in nature is nowhere to be found, that the line between animal and self is not a step, but a wound in the story, sealed over and silent. There is a place the fossil record cannot reach. Brain size can be measured, genes sequenced, but the world as it feels from the inside is a different territory. The heart problem, as philosophers call it, is not why brains think, but why anything feels like something, a pattern of neurons firing, a chemical pulse, and then pain, color, memory, longing. The voice that narrates your thoughts, the sense of being you, is not visible in a scan or a skull. No microscope has ever found the redness of red, the sting of regret, or the silent presence of your own mind. Science can trace the circuits, map the signals, but the leap from matter to meaning remains untouched. A wound in the fabric, sealed from every side but the one you live on. A hand, pressed flat against stone, becomes a shadow that outlasts the living body. In the depths of Chauvet, El Castillo, and Sulawesi, the oldest known hand stencils flicker from the cave walls, red ochre blown around fingers, leaving behind a negative, a refusal to vanish. The artist's name is lost, the pulse that shaped the pigment long stilled, but the message lingers. I was here. This is not a tool or a weapon. It does not feed or shelter. It is a mark for eyes not yet born, a silent address to absence itself. In that outline, the mind turns inward. Someone imagined being seen from a future they would never know. The boundary between animal and self dissolves. Memory and longing take form in mineral dust. The first anonymous signature left in darkness is proof that the inner world had found its surface. Cities rise, their bones of stone and glass pressing against the sky. Roads coil, wires hum, satellites blink in the dark. Every monument, every system, every silent screen, each a ripple from the same invisible center. The hand that left its shadow on a cave wall now builds towers, carves faces into mountains, launches signals into the void, and locks itself behind doors of its own making. The world fills with signs, stories, networks too vast for any single mind to hold. Yet behind it all, the same question echoes. What woke inside us, and what price did we pay to bring it forth? The gap at the heart of our origins remains, an open wound in the science of self. Today, no scan or gene can explain the first flicker of an inner world. We live with that absence, and in every silent moment, the question stares quietly back.